listen, I'm a big supporter of law enforcement, and I'm a big supporter of making sure our laws are enforced. So, there are people that have been charged that day and they deserve their day in court. But when I started hearing rumors of abuse and I started hearing things that I thought sounded really bad, that's when I started going to the DC jail and I started asking questions, and I sent letters to the Department of Justice. I sent letters to the Capitol Police. I sent letters to many places, and I sent letters to the DC jail. I sent letters to the mayor's office, and I started showing up and saying, let me in the DC jail. As a member of Congress, I provide oversight here in the District of Columbia, but it's also in our jurisdiction. And they wouldn't let me in, and they just kept refusing to let me in. But I wouldn't give up because the things I was hearing sounded really bad. So I did get into the DC jail. It's been over a week now. So I was in there just about 2 weeks ago. And the conditions I saw were extremely disturbing. As a matter of fact, I think that jail should be shut down. And I don't just say that about where the January 6th defendants are being held. I say that about a lot of parts of that jail. You see, the U.S. Marshals also inspected the facility, and they found one of the buildings to completely failed their inspection. And because of that, 400 inmates are to be moved to Pennsylvania. And that's just from the U.S. Marshals, and they were there only a couple weeks before I went in 2 weeks ago. Now, that's not where the January 6th defendants were, though. They were in another building, which is called the CTF. Now, what we were told by many people is that while the U.S. Marshals were inspecting the CDF, which failed the inspection, they cleaned up, the people at the jail cleaned up the CTF area. And so by the time the U.S. Marshals got to the CTF, it didn't fail inspection. But when we walked through there that night, I saw many bad things. I saw prisoners in lockdown and solitary confinement because they had acted out. They had attacked a guard. They had attacked another inmate, and they were on lockdown in there. But that's not the January 6th defendants. They were in a completely different area. I will say that it's very sad to see people locked in solitary confinement, and that is true human suffering, and it still deeply disturbs me to this day. We saw other parts of the jail. We saw education programs going on that I thought were very good. Opportunities for inmates to get their GED, to continue their education, to do job training, to be prepared to, go back in the world and hopefully just use their second chance and live a better life. Those are things I approve of. I think they're very good things. We also saw one area where they were having basically a mock trial where inmates were practicing what they could do when they go to court. I think that's important. I think anyone should know their rights and should know the legal system. So these are good things. But we were leaving and we were being led back to the front door, and they told us that our tour was almost over. And I said, wait a minute, we haven't seen where you're keeping the January 6th defendants. And that's when I was told that, I'm sorry, that's not part of your tour. Well, they had a big problem with me at that time because I wasn't going to leave there that night without being shown the whole facility. After all, they had shown me places of lockdown. They'd showed me good things. They showed me bad things, and I saw pretty much all of it. Why would they keep me from seeing where the January 6th defendants were being held? It didn't make any sense. So I told them they had something to hide, and I demanded that I be shown that part. And I told them, if you don't show me where the January 6th defendants are, I'm going to go on every single news network and tell them you're hiding this. And then you're going to have a very big problem. So a phone call was made, and then we got permission. And they took us into where the January 6th defendants are being held. And they're being held completely separate from the rest of the inmate population. It was totally different than the other areas. There was no education going on. There was no ability for them to have access to the library. There was no ability for them to have access to the religious services. As a matter of fact, that's being denied. They told me that they're not allowed to have communion. That I asked them, I said, well, do you have Bibles? And they said yes. And I said, so they said they do their own Bible studies because they're denied the right to see anyone for any kind of religious service. Now, here's what I did see. I saw men that haven't seen their family in months. Some of them haven't seen their family's faces since January. I also saw men that hadn't shaved, hadn't gotten a haircut, and they were told they can't shave and get a haircut unless they're vaccinated, which I think is completely wrong. I mean, we know we're all walking around every day without a mask on. We can go in a restaurant, sit down and eat. We can go get a haircut. We can do anything, and we're not. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not. But in the jail, it's bad enough to be in jail, but you're on a completely different level if you're not vaccinated. And that's what they told us. But it was also stories of abuse that seriously upset me. And that's why I'm calling on all Americans. If you're on this call, if you're watching this live, every American should care. And even if you are a Democrat and you are upset and angry and you think it was an insurrection, you should still care, because human rights abuse is human rights abuse. And these men and women, I didn't see them, but apparently there are women being held in other jails. They may be being abused too. And we need to stand up and stand against this. I was told that they're called white supremacists. I was told that they've been beaten over and over by the guards. I was told by one man that he was strip searched after a meeting with his attorney and treated in a very vile way. As a matter of fact, his own testimony about it was sealed in his court case, because whatever happened to him in that room with those guards when they forced him to take his clothes off is not a good thing. Now, there was other things that happened that they told me about. They're being denied medical treatment, and there's men in there that definitely need medical treatment. As a matter of fact, some of the prisoners brought up an older man, a much older man named Lonnie. And they told me, they said, please, Miss Greene, if you're able to get anyone out, please get Lonnie out. He needs to go to a doctor. He needs to go to a hospital. They said, Lonnie, show her your hand. And he showed me his hand. And from the middle of his arm going up into his hand is completely purple. He has a serious issue with circulation, blood circulation. And I don't know what his medical condition is. But his hand, not only is his hand purple, his thumb is black. And anyone listening to this or watching, that means there's serious problems for this man, Lonnie. He could lose his thumb. He could lose his hand. And that's not right. There was another guy being held in there that was denied treatment for cancer until finally the judge took mercy on him and sent him home so he could receive treatment for cancer. There was another man I saw in there that had a broken finger that was turned sideways, and they were denying him treatment for his broken finger. There was another man that has celiac disease, and he cannot eat gluten. It's a real condition, and the food that he eats is making him so sick that many days he doesn't eat at all. Just meat, fruits, and vegetables is all he needs to stay healthy, and it wouldn't make him sick. But oftentimes the food he gets is like cream of wheat, and that's completely gluten. So the day that I was there, he hadn't eaten all day long. Now, I just told you about men that are being held in jail, and here's the real part. They're pre-trial. They have not even been to court yet. They have not been in court. And in America, you're supposed to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. But these men are being treated worse than terrorists at Gitmo. They're being treated worse than people I saw being held in ICE detention facilities, illegals that broke crimes in our country, illegals that were waiting trial for serious crimes. Those people have it better than the January 6th defendants here in the DC jail. And I don't know how January 6th defendants are being treated in other jails across the country, because it's not just here in Washington, DC, it's other jails in other states. And I haven't seen them yet, and I don't know what's happening. Now, here's something else you should know, and this really amazed me. Every single night at 9 o'clock, the January 6th defendants, they sing the national anthem. And I don't know anyone that sings the national anthem all by themselves every single day. As a matter of fact, I don't know anyone that just joins together with their friends by themselves and says, let's sing the national anthem. But these men do. And they don't have a flag, so they took a piece of paper, a simple piece of paper, and they made their own flag. They drew a flag on their paper. And one of them held it up because it happened to be 9 o'clock rolled around while we were still there. And they held up their paper with their flag, and they sang the national anthem better than I've ever heard it before. And here's why I say that. They sang it with passion and true devotion to our country. and you could hear it in their voice. Now, we live in a time where we see people that make millions of dollars playing a sport kneel. We see people kneel during the national anthem because they believe it's racist. But our great American flag and our country is not a racist nation. Yes, sometimes people are racist, and I think that's a horrible thing. But our national anthem doesn't stand for racism. It stands for freedom for every single American. January 6th defendants are being persecuted and treated wrongly by our federal government, but yet they're willing to stand and sing the national anthem every single night at 9 o'clock. And I can tell you right now, there wasn't a dry eye in the room.